a show, very entertaining.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you don't know who's B, it's your girl Color B coming at you with a new video. So today we're going to be talking about Love is Blind Season 3, and we're just going to get right into the season because I watched the whole entire season, so this is a season review. This season was a mess. It was very messy. I believe the producers just wanted a mess. They just wanted a little bit of, razzle dazzle in their season. So let's just get to chase. There are 5 couples who basically found connections and were shown on the show as, engaged couples. So the first couple to get engaged was Alexa and Brennan. They were just like the first couple to get engaged. Within like the second episode, he already proposed to Alexa, and they were a done deal. Next couple to get engaged, I don't even remember, but Nancy and Bartise. Nancy and Bartise got engaged. Next couple, SK and Raven. Next couple, Cole and Zenab. Next couple, Matt and Colleen. So, Colleen's journey. Let's just talk about Colleen. I talked about her a little last. Get to her couple last, because Colleen basically got rejected by Brennan. Brennan was like, I already found Alexa. Alexa's my girl. Whatever. Yeah, sorry. He's moving on with Alexa. So she got shut down by, Brennan. Then she was talking to Cole. Cole, and her were having this type of connection, whatever, but then he asked her to speak about, personal things, dig deep into yourself, whatever. But she never wanted to do that. She just wanted to speak on surface level things. So that kind of put Cole off, like, they're there to find their, husband, wife, spouse, whatever. And she wasn't willing to basically open up about her life, which is fine, stuff like that. But he was just like, you're not really speaking about these things. It's kind of a little shallow. So he basically, I guess that was like what put Zenab over Colleen, because if Colleen would have just been a little bit more, I guess, personal about herself with Cole, he probably would have proposed to Colleen before rejecting her. So with that being said, his and Zenab's relationship continued while he just basically shut down Colleen. So Colleen got rejected twice. So Colleen was on her another journey, so that's when she started talking to Matt, and Matt and her had the same type of vibe, whatever, but Matt basically went through it. He was actually married, and the wife that he was married to cheated on him, and then also got a child with another guy. So that basically crushed his entire spirit, and he just basically wasn't looking for another, person. So that's basically what happened in the pods. This is just pod stuff. So also we have is Nancy, Bartise, and Raven. So basically Bartise was talking to both Raven and Nancy. He liked Raven. He was talking to Raven, and then I don't know what shifted, but I guess because they were, they had similarities of their work ethic in life and whatever they did, he liked her. But it was really funny when it was funny but not funny when she was doing jumping jacks while he's basically telling his life story. So, I guess, but the thing is, Raven was just really not into Bartise like that. She was also talking to SK, and SK basically, he was just telling Raven about his life, and Raven was listening, and then something just like, I think he said something that was like very, sweet, that, she started to cry, and, with all the other guys that Raven talked to, None of the guys made her feel that way that SK made her felt. So that was basically what made Raven knew, okay, yeah, she don't really like Bartise like that, and it's really just SK for her. So when Bartise was letting Raven know that it's Nancy, not you, whatever, so she was like, okay, I got SK. So that's basically all pause. That's like the mess. So the funny thing is the producers, allowed, this love triangle, not love triangle, but this little triangle with people who had connections with the same people also be meeting each other in real life. So there was it was Bartise, Raven, and Nancy, and then it was Cole, Zenab, and Colleen. Obviously, in this situation, Raven basically shut down Bartise when after they, got out the pods and they had their fiancés. Raven was just like, yeah, that's just, you weren't being positive, or you weren't getting compliments when we were, then we never saw each other. So now when you see me, now that's when you're starting to give me compliments. So with that being said, that's when, Raven shut her down. He's like, I'm ready with SK, so I don't know why you're like trying to talk to me. So, Raven did what she did, she handled it correctly. Now, in Colleen and Cole's situation, they should have just never went there with their conversation of, saying, oh, if in the real world or whatever, they would have just talked to each other, or if they saw each other in a bar or whatever, they would have, went over there and talked to each other. And the thing is that conversation basically caused Matt and Colleen to have like their first blow up, and then also caused Zenab and Cole to have a blow up as well. So it was just a lot of mess. Like, I was just like, the producers knew what they were doing, because I'm just like, only 5 couples were able to find a connection. Because I'm just like, there's also couples that they just don't show at all. I guess they don't want their, story on television, so they don't show the other couples. Because I'm just like, there's more people. There was like 14 guys and 14 girls that came into the pod situation. So I'm just like, only 5 of them, met each other, got a relationship. So I was like, okay, that's like less than last season. So with that being said, that was like a big storyline this entire season. Fast forward to all the drama and, into the reunion and the wedding. I was very shocked when SK said, I do not. That was the first wedding that we saw. I was very shocked. I was just like, what? Also, when Bartise was like, he do not, I'm just like, Bartise was putting on a show. Because I'm just like, Mans was up there on the altar talking about, like, I wouldn't be up here if I, wasn't going to marry Nancy. So I'm just like, okay, he's going to say yes. I was like, oh, like, he's gonna say yes, because I'm just like, why are you saying, like, he's at the altar saying this, like, he's at the altar right in front of her family and his family, like, this is our story, like, I wouldn't be here if I wasn't gonna marry Nancy, whatever. So Nancy's siblings, her brothers, basically had a feeling like, Bartise wasn't about it. Bartise was just, he wasn't about it at all. He does not, they were like about to throw hands. He was just like, you brought us here for what? Why did you bring us here if you weren't gonna, marry his sister? So that was just so funny. It was funny, not funny, but I'm just like, the mother and the brother were just like dissing Bartise heavy, which is, they had every right to, because I'm just like, you said all this stuff, and then next thing you know, you basically humiliated her on her wedding day. So it's just like, what was that? I was just like, okay, because the thing is, Nancy said yes, she said I do, and then he's like, I do not, and then he was like explaining himself, and then the reasons weren't really, I guess, it didn't really make sense, to be honest, because it's just like, Nancy was just like, even with everything that happened, she was willing to marry him, Love is blind, and he's just like, well, there's still a lot of things that we need to work on, whatever. So he's like, he also said that it was in the moment that he said that, because he didn't know his decision until he was at the altar. So I'm just like, okay, if he knew this. But anyway, so he was like saying, oh, they can continue something outside of, not getting married. But Nancy was just like, well, no, this is over. If you didn't say yes to me today, we're not going to continue anything afterwards. So that was it. That was like a little drama. Like, their family, Nancy's family was ready to get at Bartise for real. So next thing you know, we get to Cole and Zeynep. Cole and Zeynep was very rocky. Like, Zeynep was she had her, things that she needed to work on. She didn't like people being in her space, especially, them first moving in together. You have Cole being kind of messy. His apartment had flies in the toilet. All that was very dirty. But, like, they showed that in 4K. They had, Zeynep was just basically getting on Cole about, like, being cleanly. Being clean, being cleanly. And, obviously having another guy or another person in her space, and, that person's not being neat or clean, basically caused, a lot of, like, a little issues or little things, like, can you clean up behind yourself, all that. So, Cole was just like, are you being passive aggressive? Like, she can be passive aggressive about me being clean, stuff like that. It's also, they were cooking in the kitchen, and, he brought up the little play gun or whatever, and he was like shooting like little Nerf guns or whatever while they're cooking, and Zeynep was just like, bro, what are you doing? And it kind of like turned the mood on Cole, which was just like, it wasn't that big of a deal, whatever, stuff like that. So then next thing he called her bipolar, which was not right to do, because he's like, oh, you're like, one day you're like fine, next day you're like on me about something and stuff like that. So he was just basically saying that, sometimes your mood changes, whatever. The next thing it was basically the day before the wedding, the day before their bachelor party. Zeynep was leaving. She was gone. She was about to leave. Next thing you know, he's like, no, Zeynep, come back, blah, blah, blah. So, basically, there's a whole thing when they're at the altar, they asked if, Zeynep would say yes. Then Zeynep just basically gave a whole speech, basically saying that, Cole basically reduced her self-esteem, all that. Basically, you nitpick on whatever she did, whatever she was eating, and stuff like that. Basically said, basically the thing with Colleen was a big factor, all that stuff. So she was just like, yeah, I can't marry you, like, I still love you, blah, blah, blah. But all the things that you did during these, like, 2 months, whatever, I think it's 2 months, yeah, I can't marry you. So he basically degraded him in front of the thing. I was like, she could at least did like what Bartise did or what Nancy did, because at the altar, when Bartise was like, I do not, Bartise asked Nancy, like, do you want to speak about it here, and she said no. What's her face? Zeynep basically in front of everybody was just like, no. She's like, oh, this is what you did. You degraded my self-esteem. You did this. You did that. Basically had a laundry list of what Cole did. And I think she never, I guess, mentioned it, like, face-to-face or sat down with him and was like, okay, this is what you're doing. This is what you did. Like, she didn't mention everything that happened, but it was, like, I don't think it was to that extent where she basically was like, oh, I'm upset. Like, for real, and this is like a big factor why I can't, marry you. So Cole felt a little blindsided at the wedding, that he was like so heartbroken. After she said all that and like walked off the altar, her friends clapped. So that was like another factor. So like Cole just felt, degraded in front of everybody, and then basically just felt like, was premeditated. To them, to him, basically to everybody, it was just like, whoa. Like, you really, like, went on Cole in front of everybody. So, that was that wedding. Next thing you know, Alexa and Brennan, they obviously got married. You know, they're probably the only couple the entire season that really didn't have major problems, major issues. And then the last couple was Matt and Colleen, and they also got married. So yeah, Colleen and Matt got married. Obviously, you know, they overcome the blow up between, you know, Colleen and Cole's conversation, and, you know, they were able to get married. So basically, out of the 5 couples, 2 of them got married, which was Alexa and Brennan, and Matt and Colleen, which was very, you know, Matt and Colleen did not seem like a very likely couple to get married. So that was probably like maybe the surprising one, because especially with, you know, Matt blowed up twice. He blew up the first time with the Cole and Colleen conversation, and then he blew up the second time when they were at a, you know, club party, whatever, and Colleen wasn't back at the apartment, so he was literally packing his suitcase, ready to leave. He was like, "Yeah, I'm done." Like, he was peacing out. So I was just like, "Whoa!" Bartiz had to come over to his apartment to be like, "Yo, just calm down, you know, whatever." And that's how he was able to stay, because he was really like literally packing his stuff to go. But anyway, that was the season. So let's get into the reunion. So in the reunion, you know, they were asking questions, whatnot. So they first hit on Raven and SK. And, you know, SK said he do not. But it looks like, you know, they were like, they told the public, they told the, you know, everybody, the audience, that they're still together, they're dating, they're not married, but, you know, they were able to work it out. And we were just like, yes. Because I actually like Raven and SK's relationship. Raven and SK's relationship was probably the most realistic relationship. Literally on night 1, after they came out the pods and were, you know, able to stay with each other, everybody was like doing whatever they were doing. And Raven and SK were just moving at a normal space. Like, it's an awkward, you know, you never met this person face to face, and now you're like, after you did, you gotta spend the night together, share a bed, all that stuff. And that's just like, you know, understandable that you're not like all over each other. So while everybody else was all over each other, Raven and SK were just like, you know, taking their time. So I think, you know, their relationship is, I guess, more realistic in terms of how they process and move things. Of course, other people did move at a, you know, faster pace and were able to, you know, get down the aisle and say yes and I do and marry each other. But, you know, they're still together, they're moving at their pace. And SK, he had some stuff to say, like, man's really said closed mouths don't get feed. I'm like, brother, like, what? Man said closed mouths don't get feed? Like, who? But anyway, I'm just happy that they're together. They were basically my faves from the 5 couples, really, realistically. So yeah. So the next thing you know, we get to Alexa and Brennan. Basically, throughout the season, they didn't really have any problems, all that. Then, you know, Alexa reveals that, you know, the only problem they have is basically like roommate type issues. So they're like, don't let roommate issues be marriage issues. And with that being said, it was just basically, you know, cleaning after yourselves, you know, washing dishes, you know, laundry, stuff like that. So that was basically their only issue, even after they're married. So then we hit to Bartiz and Nancy. So Bartiz and Nancy, you know, obviously they talked about, like, after, you know, the wedding, you know, the next day or a couple days later, Bartiz was on a boat with another girl, and, you know, obviously it was posted on Instagram or whatever. So they were like, you know, Nancy was the one who saw it, and they were like, oh, you know, so you just moved on quickly. So they were basically kind of mad that he moved on quickly, which is just like, to be honest, I don't think that's the real issue, because, I mean, granted, the dude said no at the altar. So if he moved on quickly, that's just him moving on quickly. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he said no. I mean, he did say that he would like to see where it could go, you know, outside after the situation, but she said no. She said it's over, they're done. So I don't really understand how they're kind of on him about, you know, moving on too fast. You know, his behavior while they were fiancés and engaged to each other, you know, was just a little like, what are you doing? I think they should have had a little bit more realistic smoke for him at the reunion than they had for Cole, but we move. So really, Bartice and Nancy, you know, they, you know, haven't really, I don't think they talked much after, you know, the wedding, all that. But that was really the only tea update from them, is that, you know, they're not together. You know, he was seen with another person shortly after the wedding, which they were trying to bring up. But I'm just like, I mean, he does say that, you know, he still thinks about him saying if he would have said yes to Nancy, how his life would have been, because, you know, he did love Nancy and Nancy did love him, da da da. So then we get to last but not least, Cole and Zena. So obviously Zena basically informed the girls on, you know, Cole or whatever he did. So there's one big thing, you know, she basically was saying like how Cole degraded her, reduced her self-esteem, you know, basically she said she ate just a spoon of peanut butter and a banana, like she wasn't eating. She reduced her food intake, all that, and it was she basically saying it was because of Cole or whatever he said. So it was basically, you know, newsworthy to Cole, because Cole was just like, I don't think he was doing, like, basically making, you know, nitpicking on her food. He's like, he didn't even care what you ate, like, you could have ate whatever. So basically Zena was saying, like, you know, you're lucky that the TV producers protected you, because, you know, they don't, like, we never saw any type of like nitpicking about food from Cole during the season. Like, you're lucky that these producers are protecting you, da da da. So Cole just like, you know, what are you saying? Like, what are you, like, I never did this, da da da. So it's basically like a he said, she said thing. He was just basically shook by what she said at the altar. And, you know, he was telling his friends, like, you know, that's not her. Like, basically, he felt blindsided to the point that, you know, he was like, oh, she's going to text him back, whatever. He's like, he never called her because of the whole situation. So Raymond was like, oh, you never took accountability or whatever. But I'm just like, if someone told you off in front of your whole entire family at the altar, take accountability for what? Like, to be real, who's gonna call somebody back after they embarrassed you and basically wanted nothing to do with you, and never called you, reached out to you about the situation? Like, no. Like, you think I'm gonna call you? Like, be for real. Who's gonna call after you got dragged at the altar? Well, she did say, like, he's still a good guy, blah blah blah, but, you know, what he did to her wasn't acceptable and stuff like that. That's why she couldn't marry him. So we get to the end of the reunion. And the end of the reunion, there was a specific clip between Cole and Zena, which was the Tangerine cutie story, whatever. So they're just talking, and, you know, she's eating and talking about, like, you know, who they're going to invite to a wedding, what's the guest list like, and, you know, because Zena has family in England and other parts of the country, you know, like, we're going to go from England here, we're going to have the one there, the one in England, and some other parts. So they were just eating, talking, whatever. So she says to Cole, like, oh, you know, sometimes I don't really listen to what you say. Like, if some things what you say is basically Cole talk, and he's just like, what? So he just basically, like, she had 2 tangerines in her hand, and he was like, oh, you're gonna eat all that? You know, because tonight we're gonna have, like, a big dinner. So, like, you know, just to, like, keep your appetite or stuff like that. So she was basically telling at the reunion, like, oh, you know, basically making him feel like, oh, you need to watch what you eat, blah, 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 blah. So he was basically saying, like, So after he found out that she only ate like a peanut butter and banana, he was like, oh, I offered you like food last night and you don't want that. And she's like, oh, that's just the same food from the other night, I don't want it. And then also, she was like saying like him basically telling her that, oh, eating 2 tangerines was too much or whatever. He never said that. He just said that, you just want to keep your appetite for dinner later because we're gonna have a big dinner, da da da. So she took it as like, oh, you're basically like nitpicking me for eating a bowl of fruit. So that's how she took it. So I'm just like, it kind of misconstrued, and then she took that and basically said, like, oh, Cole was nitpicking you at something, and like he really didn't. Like the whole conversation, he was just basically just being himself, talking whatever, and he just said like, just keep your appetite because we're gonna have a big dinner. After he found out that she didn't eat the night before, she was like, but I offered you like a poke bowl, whatever, and that was it. So she made it seem like something really extreme, and Cole was just like, what? So he was blindsided. So, and the producers were so messy because literally after the reunion end, there's like Zenab and Cole, the Tangerine story. I'm just like, bro, it just basically put Zenab in a new light because it just shows like what other stories or what other things have Zenab basically misconstrued to make it seem like, oh, Cole was bad, or Cole was basically like, making her feel bad for her weight. Because at the end of the thing, he was like, oh, are you trying to get into like, oh, your wedding dress or whatever? Are you getting like wedding gown ready or whatever? He was basically just asking like why are you not eating a lot like that? Are you getting a wedding gown ready? And I guess, I don't know how, whatever, the conversation continued. But, he really was just like, oh, well, I didn't eat. I gave you food, or I tried to offer you food, you didn't want it. And then he just said like, oh, well, just keep your appetite for dinner tonight because you're eating fruit, like, I guess, whatever. So that was it. So she kept that and made it seem like, oh, you're basically telling me to watch my weight, all that, basically nitpicking me. But that was basically Cole and Zenab. And my thing is, Cole is not innocent at all in the situation of his relationship with Zenab. But to say that, he was basically degrading her with her weight and like nitpicking on what food that she eats and stuff like that, that's basically where, it crossed the line. And basically after that footage got reviewed, basically the aftermath and like people, the perspective of the audience changed. Like everyone's like, oh, Zenab was the bad guy, not Cole, blah blah blah. And I don't think anybody's really the bad guy. I just think things got misconstrued. They both need to work on themselves because Cole was immature, especially with what he did with Colleen. I think if he never, said what he said to Colleen, I think him and Zenab's relationship could have been way, way better. You know what I'm saying? If that Colleen situation never happened, him and Zenab relationship could have been way, way better. He basically was, he just needs to focus on himself and, work better. Like, that whole thing at the altar really took a toll on him. Like, he said that, he was just very heartbroken, never dated anybody else. He never called Zenab or texted Zenab or reached out to Zenab, and he was just focusing on his work. Zenab, she needs to just focus on herself because I feel like she has a lot of insecurity issues, and hopefully she is doing better than before. But the fact that she really misconstrued the Tangerine story into like something very huge, it kind of just makes people believe or think like what other things that happened that she misconstrued and made it out to be something bigger, which I think that's why people are kind of like, oh, she's the villain of that story, which I don't think there's any villains at all. I just feel like they both needed to work on themselves, because especially with her telling Cole basically that sometimes she don't even listen to him, and like sometimes she's just speaking Cole speak or Cole talk. It just basically shows that like she really wasn't listening to him, or she basically just took whatever he said and like changed the context of the situation. and that was what it is. I feel like him, you know, being, I guess, the nights that he was like being brutally honest or saying like, oh, she's a 9, and, you know, like rating her out of 10 and calling her a 9, and basically telling her about him and Colleen or whatever, or how he felt about Colleen and stuff like that. I think that brutally honestness is like, it's nice, but sometimes you gotta understand like what you should say. Like him and Bartise basically had the same situations, you know. I think, you know, I guess Nancy kind of liked Bartise's, you know, basically respected that Bartise was like brutally honest. You know, he never lied to her at all, but that brutal honestly was like, sometimes you could have just like left it, because him talking about Raven to Nancy and saying like, oh yeah, Raven's this, Raven's that, like Raven's a smoke show, like right to Nancy. I'm just like, dude. And then Cole basically doing that, basically calling Zenab a 9 and saying like, you know, he thinks somebody else is a 10 or whatever. I was like, these people are your fiancés. Like, you need to, you know, chill out. But that's what it was. Like I said, this season was very messy. It was a mess, but it was entertaining. It was an entertaining mess. And at the end of the day, you know, it is what it is. Anyway, guys, if you like this video, like the video, comment down below. Let me know your thoughts, comments, concerns, and you're not subscribed to my channel, subscribe. Anyway, thank you guys for watching this video. Peace.